up in Waco reading Dave Campbell. I'll never forget when I was a kid and I could barely read. My dad would come home every day and he'd read the Waco Tribune Herald. And when he was through with the sports section, he'd hand it to me and he'd say, John Craig, if you want to know what's going on with Baylor at the Southwest Conference, you need to read Dave Campbell. And I said, well, who's Dave Campbell? And he said, he's the guy that is the writer for the paper, and he's also just started a magazine called Texas Football, and I want you to read that too. So every day after that, because I loved Baylor at that point, he would come in, give me the sports section. I didn't know what most of the words meant, but I'd read it real slow and try to read Dave Campbell. And he was a legend. He was an icon. He was a mentor to me. In 1972, my first year out of high school, I was selling men's clothes at a store there. And one night, a woman is rummaging through the shirts, and she couldn't find shirts for her husband, said she's going to come back the next night. Before she left, she said, what's your name? I said, John McClain. She said, what do you go to school? I said, I'm a freshman at MCC. And she said, what do you want to do? I said, maybe something in football because I know more football than anybody in Waco. She said, is that right? I said, yes, ma'am, I do. So she said, I'll tell you what, put these shirts aside for me and I'll bring my husband here tomorrow night and we'll see if he likes them. If he does, we'll buy them. And I worked off commission. And I said, yes, ma'am. So I put them aside. Next night, right before closing, here she comes back, dragging her husband, who looks like he'd rather be getting a colonoscopy than have to come to a clothing store. And she brings him up, asks me for the shirts. I put them out on the counter, and she says, honey, this is a nice young man I told you about. She said, I forgot your name. I said, John McClain. She said, no, didn't you tell me you know more football than anybody in Waco? I said, yes, ma'am. I put my chest out. I said, I sure do. I grew up loving football. And she said, well, I'd like you to meet my husband, Dave Campbell. And I put my hand up. And then it dawned on me who was standing there, because his picture was never in the paper, it was his name. And I put my hand up, and he shook it, and I was like Porky Pig. I was like, buh, 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 and I was speechless. Now, I've talked to Dave, told him that story a million times. He didn't remember it, and 2 years later, I was working for him at the Waco Tribune Herald, and he hired me, and he was a mentor and a good friend all the way up till the end. He died at 96. We knew it was coming, matter of time, but it was a gut punch still because he still was in pretty good health until near the end. And I feel so bad for his family and all of his fans. Dave Campbell had so many fans all over the country, but especially because of Texas football being the Bible of Texas football. And I'll never forget, Touchdown Club of Houston honored him as Sportsman of the Year about 15 years ago. And at the head table, they had all these former Texas football cover boys, and they all got up and told stories about them and their parents rushing to the store to get the magazine as soon as it came off the presses, and they told stories about their mamas and daddies buying everything on the shelves to save them, and some of them going from town to town, Lamarck and Dickinson and Hitchcock and Galveston, because all the shelves were empty of Texas Football magazine. It was an honor to work for Dave Campbell. It was an even bigger honor to know him because I've never known a better man.